Hey guys, welcome back to another video. Today, we're going to be going over the possibility in which Kamala Harris is surprisingly underestimated in this election and Donald Trump is overestimated, because I have seen a numerous number of right-leaning pollsters skew the average and flood the polling aggregate that makes it look like Donald Trump in reality is, or not in reality, is winning every single swing state. Meanwhile, in reality, it's actually much, much closer than that. But before we get on to the video, make sure you guys are subscribed, click the bell so you don't miss all my content, press the like button, share this video. Don't forget we do have memberships. If you are interested, you can find the link to that in the description section. So, as an example, you take a look at some of these swing states like Pennsylvania, in which if you really take a look at the polls individually, you take a look at Trafalgar, that's a right-leaning pollster, has Trump up by 3% in the state of Pennsylvania. Now, if Biden was still in the race, I would believe this, because on average, even the left-leaning pollsters had Trump up by close to 2 or even 3 points. But not right now. I think this race is extremely close. So Trafalgar is skewing this aggregate. If you just remove this pollster, then that very well can give Kamala Harris the lead. Not only that, Trafalgar is not the only one. Rasmussen reports, another right-leaning pollster, severely overestimated Trump's chances in the 2020 election when it comes to the popular vote, but was slightly more accurate in the state-by-state polling. Has Trump up by 3% in the state of Pennsylvania. The same thing with Trafalgar, 3%. Do I really believe that? Probably not. And those are not the only two polls you have. Another one, the Insider Advantage. I literally just named 3 right-leaning pollsters that are flooding the polling aggregate on RCP and 538 as well, skewing the average, making it look like Trump's in the lead. But if you really remove those polls, Kamala ends up winning. The Insider Advantage, Trafalgar, and Rasmussen are 3 right-leaning pollsters I just mentioned that are heavily skewing the aggregate in favor of Donald Trump, which are very not accurate pollsters whatsoever. Has Trump up by 2%, and also the sample size is very small. Now, if you're a Republican, then what your perspective would be is that the right-leaning pollsters are canceling out the inaccuracy of the left-leaning pollsters. Therefore, this is actually accurate. And you can make that case. I think that's pretty fair. And it is somewhat true that the right-leaning pollsters funding the polls will cancel out the inaccuracy of the left-leaning pollsters, which would basically balance out things. It brings, balance to the polling aggregate. Now, I partially agree with that. And also, there are left-leaning pollsters that are showing good signs for the former president in the popular vote, because recently, the Washington Journal, I believe, just came out with a poll that Trump is up by 3 points nationally with the popular vote. Not 3 points in a swing state, but nationally. And that is a left-leaning pollster. So it is also true that, yes, there are left-leaning pollsters that show strong numbers for Donald Trump. Now, that's a conservative perspective, obviously. But if you're an independent or a liberal, it is true that there are a number of right-leaning pollsters that are skewing the aggregate. And not just in Pennsylvania. That was just one example for one state. Let's take a look at North Carolina, for example. Yet again, you have the Insider Advantage, in which shows Trump is up by 2 percentage points in this state. This is a right-leaning pollster that shows it is a tight race. So the fact that you have a right-leaning pollster that only has Trump up by 2, you would think he would be up by even more than that. That goes to show you that the real numbers would be much, much closer on election day. And then you have basically the Rasmussen reports again. Trump's up by 5. That is really skewing this. Realistically, Kamala could be favored in North Carolina. I'm not saying she is, and I do have Trump winning this state, obviously. But you have Trafalgar, yet again, skewing this aggregate. Trump is up by 2 percentage points. And these are happening very consistently, similar to what happened in the 2022 midterms. I'm not trying to compare this election to the midterms because it's not really the same thing, but it's really reminding me and giving me flashbacks of the midterms when you had, in 2022, you've seen a lot of right-leaning pollsters really flood the polls. It made Democrats worried. In reality, they were actually up, and they expanded the seats or their majority in the Senate, and the Republicans were severely overestimated in the U.S. House of Representatives. So that's just 2 swing states that I just went over, in which you see a lot of pollsters, right-leaning ones, overestimate Trump, and it's skewing the aggregate. Even the left-leaning polls, like Emerson, which I would say is really not really left-leaning. I think that's one of the more accurate pollsters. They have a really high rating on 538. Has Trump up, by 2 percentage points. So from a conservative perspective or right-leaning person, if you are that, then you would say that Rasmussen and Trafalgar having Trump up by 5 and 2 doesn't matter. When you have Emerson, who is not really friendly to Republicans, has Trump up by 2 North Carolina, meaning he is realistically favored. Like I mentioned earlier, that is true, that there are left-leaning pollsters that show strong signs for Donald Trump in some of these states. Bloomberg, a very left-leaning pollster, has Trump up by 1 in the state of North Carolina. Now, this is another reason why I do have Trump winning North Carolina by somewhere in between 2 to 3 percentage points. I would say 2.5 right now. Is because not only there are, right-leaning pollsters skewing the aggregate, that is true, but then you have left-leaning ones that also suggest the same thing, that Trump really is favored. Now, Donald Trump being overestimated in this election, being a possibility, does not mean he's going to lose the election. I mean, he could still be overestimated and still win the election. The same thing happened to Joe Biden in 2020. I think it could happen for Trump. The same thing for him this time around. Biden was overestimated, but it does not mean he lost the election. He still ended up winning. It was just much, much closer than that. And then you have another example from a different swing state, this time being the state of Georgia. Another right-leaning pollster, Trafalgar, has Trump up by 1% in the state of Georgia. And considering that this is a right-leaning pollster that has Trump by only 1, that is not good news for him. Another one, Insider Advantage, extremely skewing this aggregate in favor of the former president, has Trump up by 2% in this state. Now, if you are a Republican, this is your perspective. Quinnipiac, right over here, is a left-leaning pollster, has Trump up by more than what the right-leaning pollsters have him up by, which goes to show you, if a left-leaning pollster has Trump up in the state of Georgia by even more than what the right-leaning ones have, then Kamala Harris really has no chance of winning this state. So that's that. And then another battleground state, Wisconsin. We're just pretty much going over all these battleground states. Trafalgar, yet again, has it a tie. A right-leaning pollster has it a tie. You would think Trump should be up in this poll because Trafalgar's a right-leaning one. But no, it's a tie. Meaning, in reality, Wisconsin can very well go to Harris, but it's going to be close no matter what. And I do think that as far as the Sun Belt goes, I don't think they're really going to overestimate Donald Trump. And if they do, he's still going to wind up locking down the Sun Belt because there is a lot of left-leaning pollsters that show Trump is up consistently in the Sun Belt. For example, Arizona and Georgia. I just went over Georgia, obviously. Quinnipiac, not kind to Republicans at all, has Trump up by 2 in Georgia. So I really do strongly believe he is going to lock down the Sun Belt. With the exception for Nevada, as of right now, I think that's currently toss-up. But as far as the Rust Belt goes, I think Kamala is being slightly underestimated. Therefore, I give her Wisconsin based off of the polling errors. And in each and every election, there's roughly, on average, a 3 to 4% polling error in favor of one candidate. And in 2020, obviously, it went in favor of Trump, even though we still lost. They overestimated Joe Biden. And in 2016, there's roughly 3.5% polling error in favor of Donald Trump. They overestimated Hillary Clinton. What is it going to be this time around? In favor of Trump or in favor of Kamala Harris? And considering that the election is extremely close, the polls we're seeing now is actually closer than the 2000 election between Gore and Bush. I believe that's the election that was extremely close. And if there is a 3.5% polling error in each election on average, which there is, it's a fact, then that means in reality, because the polls are this close, either candidate can win in a landslide. At this point, if Kamala Harris is underestimated by the average polling error percent in each election, she's going to win with 319 electoral votes. And if Trump is underestimated by the average polling error of every election by 3.5 to 3 to 4 points, he will win with 312 electoral votes. So either candidate realistically can actually win an electoral landslide. And as for the state of Michigan, Donald Trump, yet again in my opinion, is being overestimated. Now, it does not mean he's going to lose the state because he's being overestimated, but it means it's going to be a lot closer. I mean, it's pretty much close as it gets, 0.2%. Now, if you remove Trafalgar, which is overestimating Trump's support, in my opinion, shows him up by 2, and Michigan. Keep in mind, this was the bluest Rust Belt state in 2020. It voted to the left of both Pennsylvania and Wisconsin, and went to Biden by nearly 3 points. I just don't believe Trump wins Michigan by 2 if he wins it at all. At this point, I think Kamala is barely the favorite by a tilt margin of under a percentage point. But if you just remove Trafalgar from this aggregate, that already alone on itself gives Kamala Harris the lead in this state. And that's just one right-leaning pollster. I think that's an outlier. You have Rasmussen, yet again, shows it a tie. If a right-leaning pollster has it a tie, realistically, in reality, Kamala Harris is the favorite, in my opinion. Same thing. Insider advantage. These are 3 different right-leaning pollsters in one state that all are overestimating Trump. You just remove them. They are skewing the aggregate. Kamala, in reality, is actually winning this state. He's up by 2 in this right-leaning pollster. Now, if you are a Republican, your argument would be, well, if you take a look at the Hill and Emerson, those favor Democrats. That poll favors Democrats. It's a tie, meaning that it is a close race. Well, that is true. It is a close race. And you also could say that Bloomberg is skewing this aggregate because they have Kamala Harris up by 3 percentage points. That means she would win by more of a margin than Biden did in 2020. He only won it by 2.8. So I do think Bloomberg is an outlier, meaning that if you're conservative, your argument would be, like I mentioned earlier, that the right-leaning pollsters skewing the aggregate would cancel out the left-leaning pollsters being not accurate, which would bring balance. That also could be the case. Yet again, I'm just bringing ideas in this video. Now we move on to some of these Sunbelt states, which I mentioned earlier. I do think even if they overestimate Trump, it's not going to be enough for Kamala to win Arizona. Because, yet again, you'll have a left-leaning pollster, CBS. This poll is not kind to Donald Trump. It is not Republican-friendly at all. Has them up by 3 points in the state of Arizona. So even if you have a right-leaning pollster like the Insider Advantage has them up by 3, you would say that's an outlier. This pollster is skewing the average. Well, that could be the case, but then you have a left-leaning pollster which suggests the same thing of 3% for Donald Trump with a large sample size, actually larger than the right-leaning pollster, which is why, if you're a Republican, you would use that argument to say that even if these right-leaning pollsters are skewing the aggregate and helping Donald Trump, you can take a look at the left-leaning pollsters, which also suggests that Kamala is losing this state, which is why it's different, and that's why I think Kamala Harris's chances are better in the Rust Belt rather than the Sun Belt. I think her path is only through Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Because if you compare the polls from the Rust Belt to the Sun Belt, you would see that not only are the right-leaning pollsters having Trump up significantly in Arizona, but also the left-leaning ones are as well, indicating that you can't really find a poll that shows Kamala is going to win Arizona. You really can't. But the difference is that the polls from the Rust Belt, you obviously have a lot of right-leaning pollsters skewing the aggregate, suggesting Trump will barely win. You would think that he would be winning by even more. On top of that, you have the left-leaning pollsters that obviously have Kamala up. So therefore, I do believe that Donald Trump locks down the Sun Belt, but Harris has a better chance in the Rust Belt, as I just explained. Now let's fill out this map if Kamala is, severely underestimated. She's going to win Wisconsin, she's going to win Michigan, and let's just say she might win Pennsylvania along with the state of Nevada. In Nevada, as we all know, typically overestimates Republican support, just how they did in the 2022 midterms. So let's take a look at some of these polls individually. You have Rasmussen suggesting Trump's up by 2. It's really skewing this aggregate, and his lead on average is 0.7. You just remove Trafalgar from this polling aggregate, yes, Kamala will probably take the lead. And you remove Rasmussen, Trump's up by 2, with a pretty small sample size, not accurate, then Kamala realistically is going to win the state of Nevada. Now, yet again, a Republican's argument would be, well, you have the Wall Street Journal, a left-leaning pollster has Trump up by 6 in the state of Nevada. So what's the point? If you have a left-leaning pollster having Trump up, in this state pretty significantly, more actually greater of a margin than a right-leaning pollster, then Nevada is not going to go to Kamala Harris. But yet again, that's a really small sample size. I'm just bringing ideas to this video. But let's just say Kamala is slightly underestimated in the Rust Belt. Okay, she's going to get 276 electoral votes, winning the election. Donald Trump is probably still going to win Arizona, probably still win Georgia, locking down the Sun Belt. It's going to be an extremely close election no matter who wins. But yet again, you can also argue that it's going to be a landslide for either candidate, because on average in every single election, there's roughly a 3 to 4% polling error, basically 3.5, in either candidate's favor. Let's just say if Trump gets that polling error boost, he's going to win 312 electoral votes. If they overestimate Kamala, with the average polling error in every single election of 3.5, then she gets 319. There's a bunch of possibilities, a bunch of possible scenarios that can play out in this election. Now, what if Kamala is still underestimated, but it's not enough to give her the presidency? Okay, well, let's just say she does win Michigan, but she loses Wisconsin and Pennsylvania. Trump's going to win the election with 291 electoral votes. So, one last fine reminder is to subscribe, click the bell so you don't miss out on my content, press the like button, share this video. If you are interested, don't forget we do have memberships. You can find a link to that in the description section. That's pretty much it. Thank you everyone for watching. Let me know, do you think that Kamala is being underestimated, and do you think this year could be similar to what we saw in the 2022 midterms?